back. This is video 3 for MPA100, Music Fundamentals, Fundamentals of Music. Our second video got us to the topic of the black keys. We were just sort of starting to introduce those, but today we'll use them a lot more because we need to use them to build any major scale other than a scale built from C. C major is the only scale that can be constructed using only the white keys. If I play a C, and you remember that part of what makes that have that very distinctive sound is the fact that there's this pattern of whole step, half step, whole step, half step. So if I start on any other note, I can't get that pattern using only white keys. So as we explore this idea, we have a diagram that's going to be very useful for keeping track of a lot of this new information. That's this thing right here called the circle of fifths. It's a diagram from your textbook, page 8 of your Koska-Payne textbook. So the diagram, circle of fifths, is almost always shown with C up here at the top. It's a scale with 0 sharps or flats. And so the first new key is the key of G, and circle of fifths, if I start on a C and count up 5 keys, 5 notes, I land on the note G. This G now is our first key, our first note of our new scale. So if I want to play a scale, a G major scale, then starting here, I play that same pattern, whole step, half step, whole step, half step. Here's whole step, half step, whole step. To get to this second to the last note, I need to use the key F sharp in order to get a whole step, and then a half step brings me home. Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. To get that orientation in the last 2 notes, I need to use an F sharp. Our diagram of circle of fifths helps us keep track of that. We're going to find some principles that this actually illuminates. But before we do that, let's just do a couple of keys. So if now I start on G and count up 5, G, that gets me to the note D, and D is the next new key around the circle of fifths. It will have 2 sharps. So if I start on a D right here, and I go whole step, I keep the F sharp, whole step, whole step, half step. To retain that pattern of whole step, half step, whole step, half step, I need to add a new sharp, and that is the C sharp. And so D is made with 2 sharps, and there again on our diagram, our circle of fifths, it still shows us that. Let's continue one more before we try to pull out some principles from this. If I start on D, any D, and go up 5 steps, I will D, E, I keep the F sharp, I land on the note A. So A is the starting point for our 3rd key. And if I do the same pattern, whole step, that whole step, half step, whole step, half step, I need to introduce a new sharp. A, the key of A, has 3 sharps, and the new one is the note G sharp. We find, as we start looking now at a few keys that we're learning, with each new key as I go around the circle of fifths, I add 1 sharp on this side. C had no sharps. G, I added the sharp F sharp. D, I have to add a C sharp. A, I add a G sharp. I keep everything I already had. We discover that the new sharp is always the 7th degree of the scale. I'll do that again on A. Starting on A, whole step gets me to B, whole step gets me to C sharp, half step gets me to D, whole step gets me to E, whole step gets me to F sharp, and whole step gets me to F sharp, half step gets me to A. All right? So it's maintaining this pattern of whole step, half, whole step, whole step, whole step, half, that gives us that major scale sound. And each time I move around the circle of fifths here and pick a new starting point, I'm going to add one more sharp. We're going to do two more keys. So if I go up 5 steps from A, pick an A, I land on the note E, and E is now the starting point for my next key, which will have 4 sharps, and the new one will be D sharp, the 7th degree of the scale, or you notice it's a note right before E. E, F sharp is a whole step, G sharp whole step, A half step, B whole step, C sharp whole step, D sharp whole step, E half step. And one last key. I'm going to keep these videos a little bit shorter than I have done, and that's going to be the key of B. Again, if I start on E and I go up 5 steps, I land on the note B, circle of fifths. That's my new tonic, the starting point for my next key. And this B, we'll use the 4 sharps we already had plus A sharp. So B to C sharp is a whole step, to D sharp is a whole step, to E is a half step, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B. It's by maintaining that organization of whole step, half, whole step, half, that I maintain that major scale sound. And each time I move to a new key up a fifth, I'm going to add a new sharp, and it will be the 7th degree of the scale. Now, you can see here on the circle of fifths that we could go up another fifth to the key of F sharp, but we're actually going to leave that as G flat. You'll see that we can come up to these keys around this way as well, and we're going to do that in the next video. I'm going to try and keep these videos a little tiny bit shorter. And so let's just see if I want to do one more thing here. Yes, this is where I will sign off on this video. The next video, we'll look at the flat side, and then we will talk about how to write these things.